the smart play is to mitigate the volatility and put predictability into that currency equation.
Thank you. So another thing is, what about government incentives in terms of, this is another question, is what about other government incentives or instruments that can support businesses during this time as well?
Speaking as an American, I know that our government has a lot of different programs run by different agencies. The problem seems to be that there's no clearinghouse of information for the SMEs who are looking for help. They have to go to each agency and say, this is my situation, what can you offer me? And you end up having to be a gatherer of a lot of a lot of information. Maybe some other countries are more helpful to their small exporters. It's not that we don't have the tools; they're just so spread out, and it's kind of intimidating for people to to go into the U.S. Department of Agriculture website and see what programs am I eligible for. There should be like a dashboard that says, okay, Commerce Department offers this, Department of Agriculture offers that, and just something easy for everybody to use. Exists now. So speaking on the American side, they're sort of on their own.
Yeah, I have to say, Craig, I mean, we have a variation of the same problem in Canada, and I see it in my international policy work as well. It's a recurring problem for small and medium-sized enterprises. And I was having this conversation with a colleague in London this morning who was trying to think about SME finance and how to solve the SME finance problem. And one of the exchanges we had was very much about the fact that many SMEs and micro enterprises have no idea where to get started, even to find the information that they need on all of these things, including financial support programs. The positive note I might add here is to say that COVID-related support is being taken very seriously by a number of governments, and they've got support to help small businesses maintain their viability. There are some efforts to try to support success of small businesses in cross-border trade. And we've even tried through the International Chamber of Commerce, through some of our advocacy work, to remind governments through the G20 process, which this year is chaired by Saudi Arabia, to say, look, guys, don't forget access to trade finance as you're thinking about this COVID-related support, because all of the cross-border flows that we're all going to end up depending on to drive the economy forward post-COVID will depend very significantly on trade. And so we better make sure we have some component of trade-related support in all of the programs that are being developed here.
Yeah, I should probably, speaking from the experience we have with the countries that we're definitely on the ground in, the problems that or the highlight that you've raised, Craig, Alexander, from our side of things is actually not unique. It seems to be quite a common issue in terms of access to the right resources and links for most companies. Probably the one thing I would probably add from our side of things looking at this is to look at what your export credit agency in your country is doing. Each country's export credit agency is going to have a different name, but you need to have a look at what they're trying to do, because I do know just in Australia that our export credit agency here has re-looked at how it's shaping its small business export loans around COVID. So, but it is always the battle of trying to get the right information and concise information out to businesses. And I am aware that GTPA has been trying to do it on our website. Where we've got the information and the links, we are just putting them up there as much as possible, and then working with a couple of other sort of global organizations that are doing the same thing, so we can all work together to share simplified links and access to resources. Probably, just if it's okay with you guys, we've only got time for one more question. And actually, this question that's come through is actually talking to what GTPA is doing around some of these issues in terms of supply chain management and what we do to help support SMEs in this way. So, I mean, I could talk about it, but the point of this discussion is not for me to talk about it. But, perhaps Alexander, Craig, from your insights on what we're doing from a policy perspective, from the solutions that we're working on and tools, maybe you could talk briefly to some of the stuff you've been having some oversight on with us on the organization.
So I'll kick that off. That's a very timely question. Lisa and Alexander and I are very involved in a survey that's going to be going out within the next few weeks to a large number of MNCs and SMEs and government entities with the goal to see how we can improve access to the MNC's global value chains for small and medium enterprises globally, and not only looking at it from a historical perspective, but also looking at it from a post-COVID perspective. Although we don't know what that's going to look like, but trying to understand what the impact is going to be. Are the MNCs going to be pulling in or localizing their supply chains? What does that mean? How is it going to look? And so we're going to have some very interesting data probably in the September-October timeframe to share with people about what we've found there, and hopefully we can make the approach better for the SMEs.
Thanks, Alexander.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would mention just that survey is one component of the work that we're doing. So GTPA was, I was going to say fortunate, but I'm going to say successful in winning the mandate to work with the Bloomberg New Economy Forum. And among the, let's say, work streams that Bloomberg has decided to focus in on, one of them relates to trade and driving inclusion through trade. And GTPA is actually kind of the partner for Bloomberg on that initiative. And the survey that Craig was referencing a minute ago is going to feed into the work that we're going to do around inclusive trade. One of the elements, or the initial element of which, is to enable SME access to multinational corporate supply chains, or MNC supply chains. One of the things that we're going to try to propose to this coalition of participants in this space is to say, as a large global corporate, part of what you can do to advance inclusion and inclusiveness, and part of what you can do to be a good corporate citizen, is to do more SME related sourcing. And maybe it's SME sourcing in your home market, maybe it's an emerging market, but there's that whole inclusiveness discipline that we're looking to instill. One of the things that we've drawn a bit of a distinction, Lisa, in our remarks, and you've wrapped it up nicely in your last exchange here, between the commercial side of this conversation and kind of the public policy, public interest side of the discussion. One of the things that we're going to aim to be very disciplined about in this Bloomberg New Economy work is to be very commercially focused and make it realistic, so that when we approach the larger corporates with this idea, we have something that makes viable sense and is compelling and is commercially logical, in addition to being something that you could call doing the right thing from an inclusion perspective. So I would say, keep an eye on GTPA through the website, through our various, channels and social media channels that we frequently use to keep track of the initiatives that we're going to be either launching or finalizing over the coming months, because there's a lot of interesting things coming.
Thanks, Alexandra, and thanks, Craig. And probably just even to wrap that up even further, because a lot of the businesses that are on our call are women-owned businesses that we've worked with across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. And in the work we have done with them in the past, their access to finance has been a huge issue and a barrier. And some of the follow-up questions I got here were to do with that, which we won't have. That's in itself a whole separate session on policy that we could have in terms of this issue before COVID, and actually what needs to be done to fast track and relook at policy as we come out of this. But the other side to our work on the inclusivity is we are launching a report very shortly on this that Alexander's been closely engaged with, that looks at inclusivity in trade from the perspective of women, from Indigenous groups, diaspora, and young business owners, so startups, younger sort of business owners, and what we can do from a policy perspective to actually drive greater inclusion from these groups into trade, but also looking and interconnecting that into some of the stuff that both Alexander and Craig have touched on today around trade finance and access to finance, and the crossover to into trade facilitation and trade digitization. So, you know, it is at the forefront of our work, and it's sort of rampantly picking up. So it's a bit of watch this space now, because we are taking a lot of this work very seriously, for particularly for those micro to small to medium enterprises. So just noting the timing, I would really like to thank Alexander and Craig for this excellent presentation. As Alexander had noted, it is recorded. It will be distributed for those that want to follow up. I will also follow up on getting some other answers to these questions, and we will circulate some of the responses to that for those that missed out. And I would like to thank the University of Adelaide and NC State and the Supply Chain Resource Cooperative that we're working very closely on some of these issues. As always, as I try to end these sessions, I wish you and your family well. I hope you're staying safe and sound. Please always come to the GTPA at any time. If you have questions, we're happy to answer them via email or connect you to people that can. So you can just reach out to us at info@gtpaalliance.com, and we're here to help you. So until then, stay safe and sound, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.